All right, let's go ahead and get the program started. As a precursor to the event, I do want to note that we will be recording this event. So if you do not want to show up on camera or in the recording, I would just encourage you to keep your camera off. Otherwise, we're excited to have this resource live on our website for you to come to at a later time, or for any future applicants to learn about these wonderful backstops within USAID. So my name is Christian Sosa. I'm the program manager for the Donald M. Payne International Development Fellowship Program that's funded by USAID and administered by Howard University. I'm going to assume you have some base level knowledge of USAID and the Payne Fellowship for the purposes of this webinar, just so I can breeze through those parts, that all the information is found on our website, and give as much time to our three wonderful panelists that we have, who are Payne alumni, who are foreign service officers, and super excited to give a little bit about their journey. So with that, if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to enter them in the chat as I'm speaking or as they're speaking, and we will have a Q&A portion where we'll get to all the questions in the end. You're also welcome to come off mute during that time and use the Zoom raise hand function to ask your question vocally if you feel comfortable doing so. So with those house rules out of the way, let's jump on in. So a little bit background on the Payne Fellowship. The Payne Fellowship was founded in 2012 with the goal of identifying and developing members of diverse and historically underrepresented groups for a career in the Foreign Service with USAID. So just to give some definition to that diversity or historically underrepresented, we're looking at that at several different levels. So diversity is going to mean to us, of course, racial and ethnic minorities. We're going to be looking at gender diversity. We'll be looking at geographic diversity, socioeconomic diversity, right? All these great ways that are going to bring different aspects to yourself. As you can imagine, historically, the Foreign Service within USAID and State Department has been pretty white, pretty old, and pretty male, and pretty coastal. And that's not really reflective of, American population as a whole. We're full of all these different experiences, both lived and just culturally, right? So we're hoping to create a foreign service within USAID that's going to reflect that population in all the different ways and all our different strengths. So as I mentioned, the program is funded by USAID, that's the United States Agency for International Development, and managed by Howard University. All that means is we get to run the program on behalf of the agency. You do not have to be a Howard student, nor do you need to go to a Howard graduate program to be eligible for the fellowship. We just have the honor of running the program. And it is named in honor of the late Congressman Donald M. Payne Sr. So Congressman Payne was the first African-American voted in New Jersey for Congress. And he had a very long-standing legacy and history of working towards humanitarian aid, human rights. So it's truly our honor to have this program and honor his legacy, right? To create that foreign service and invite those who may not have seen it as a path for them to public service, so a career in public service. So to provide some more background or some information on the Payne Graduate Fellowship, the Payne Fellowship awards a package of up to $90,000 in funding over 2 years to cover tuition, fees, living expenses, and your 2 summer internships. So I'm gonna go ahead and break down that financial package. So $22,000 of that $96K is allocated to your tuition and fees. That's paid directly to the graduate school of your choosing, as long as it's a graduate program that's going to be relevant to the Foreign Service with USAID, connected to a backstop that you're interested in, and meeting a couple different other criteria, then you're good to go to it. We do have a growing list of graduate partners that are going to provide supplemental financial assistance to Payne Fellows, and in some cases, even Payne finalists. So we encourage you to look into those programs, apply to those programs. It could result in a pretty hefty financial aid package for you, but you're not restricted to those programs. I, for one, am going to encourage you to go to a graduate program that's going to enrich you as you want academically, be the right place for you geographically, and of course, be the least financial burden possible, which is super important. $16,000 of that $97,000 package is allocated to you as a living stipend. So it's paid directly to you as a fellow. It's broken down in $8,000 per semester. You're able to do whatever you'd like with this money. Most fellows are going to use it for rent, or they'll use it for books, or they use it for paying their bills, all these great things. But you're welcome to do whatever you'd like. You could, for example, put it down for a car payment or buy a new car. It's your money to do whatever you'd like. I would encourage you to do it very reasonably and make sure you budget it well. So $10,000 of that $97,000 package are allocated to your 2 summer internships. So that's $10,000 each summer. Your first summer internship is going to be on Capitol Hill, where you'll be working for a member of Congress. And your second summer internship is going to be overseas with a USAID mission. That's going to give you your experience, your glimpse into the lifestyle and the career of a Foreign Service officer before you join the agency. And all that information regarding these 2 summer internships can be found on our website. And if you have any questions about those, I'd definitely be happy to address those. So in terms of our selection process and timeline, I'm going to start with talking very quickly about our application. So our application is going to be asking you for information on your academic background, and that's going to come in the form of your transcripts. One thing I like to note here is that we need to see a transcript from any university that you have received credit from of at least 6 college credits. So that means if you went to a community college and then transferred to a 4-year university, we have to see all those transcripts. If you studied abroad, but the grades aren't reflected in your undergraduate transcript, we would need to use your study abroad transcript. Getting those can be a little bit hard and time consuming, so I encourage you to start that as soon as possible. There is a 600-word statement where you'd write about your personal statement. That's your opportunity to tell us who you are, why you're interested in the career in the Foreign Service with USAID specifically, and how the Payne Fellowship is the next logical step in your journey to become a Foreign Service officer. And there's a lot of things that you can focus on in those 600 words, whether that be your own personal journey and significant moments in your life that have influenced you on this journey to become a Foreign Service officer. Maybe it is about specific issues you're interested in, whether that be climate change or sustainable development, all these different ways that you can focus on in your personal statement to show us both who you are, but also what you want to do as a Foreign Service officer. There's a lot of different ways you can go about this. Just make sure that it's well written and it's about you and it's a personal statement. We do have a component within the fellowship where we're judging financial need. But financial need is going to look like different things to different people. So we give you the space to write a 400-word statement of financial need where you're able to explain what that financial need might look like to you. So for example, maybe you had full tuition scholarships in undergrad and therefore you don't have any student loan debt, but you worked hard for those grants or you worked hard for those scholarships during your undergrad. That's a way for us to recognize that obviously graduate school is going to be a significant financial need for you or a financial burden. Maybe you worked full-time during undergrad and you're not gonna be able to work full-time because you're gonna go to school full-time for graduate school, right? There's different ways where you're able to tell us the story behind the numbers and let us know who you are financially. And it can be a little bit difficult to talk about these issues. It's a little bit sensitive, right? But I encourage you to not be shy. Again, make sure it's well written, but tell us that story because we wanna know who you are beyond the numbers. We do ask for 2 letters of recommendation, the first of which traditionally comes from a faculty member. I like to describe it as someone who could talk about your ability to produce work. So looking at writing skills that are gonna point to your readiness for graduate school, that perspective of yourself. The second letter of recommendation would be coming from what we call a community leader. This is typically someone who has overseen you working on a project. It could be a supervisor from a job, an advisor for a community service project. I like to describe the second recommendation letter as someone who could talk about your ability to do work. They sound quite similar, but essentially are gonna paint 2 different sides of you. One is gonna be looking writing skills, readiness for graduate school, who you're gonna be able to be in the work environment. The other one should be focused on your passions, your work ethic, your penchant for community service, things like that, that again are quite similar sides of you, but different parts of talking about yourself. And of course, we're going to give you the space and the opportunity to tell us anything you're proud about, whether that be community service opportunities you've had, leadership positions you've held, if you've been a published writer, all these great things that are ways for you to highlight who you are as a person. Our eligibility requirements are pretty simple. You have to be a US citizen to apply. You must have a 3.2 GPA at the time of application, and that is cumulative across all your core studies. And you must be planning to enroll in a graduate program in the fall of 2022. So that's for this current application cycle. If you're interested in applying for the Payne Fellowship, just not right now, just know that you should always be looking 1 year ahead for graduate school. So if you want to start graduate school in fall 2023, you'd apply for the Payne Fellowship in fall 2022, and so on and so forth. We do have 4 criteria for those graduate programs that I mentioned a little bit earlier. It must be a program that's relevant to career in the foreign service with USAID. And I'm going to cover what that might look like for the 3 backstops we have represented here. It has to be a graduate program that is 2 years, master's level. It cannot be a JD or PhD, unfortunately. It must be a program that is traditionally delivered in person. So no online programs, pending that it has shifted to online due to COVID-19, right? That messed everything up for us, but it has to be traditionally delivered in person. And finally, it must be based in the United States. So it can't be, for example, London School of Economics, but it could be a graduate program that has its roots in the United States, like, for example, Johns Hopkins has campuses in Italy and China. Those are acceptable because it's based in the United States. They're just an international campus. Our application deadline this year is actually not November 1st. It is now November 15th. We have just extended the deadline, which is super exciting to give you a little bit more time to work on those applications. We will still be selecting 30 finalists by the late fall. So that's going to be early December. And then interviewing those finalists the second week of January. And that is going to be a full interview week where you'd be present on one of those days. And you'll find out if you're selected as one of our 15 fellows for the 2021 cohort, or the 2022 cohort, excuse me, by the end of that week. So it's a pretty quick turnaround. We want to make sure you have that answer as soon as possible. So on to the 3 backstops we have represented. It so happens that we have the 3 E's: engineering, economist, and environment. And I know there's a lot of text on this slide, but I just want to give you a brief synopsis of what these backstops might be working on. So starting with engineering officers. Engineering officers provide technical expertise when it comes to construction, maintenance, infrastructure facilities, and other construction projects, right? Of course, engineering is in the name, so that's kind of what you're going to be focusing on. So you're going to be looking at those types of projects, including water and sanitation infrastructure, roads and transportation, energy, hospitals, clinics, schools, and all these other things that have to be built in order to do great development work. So that's sort of their domain within the realm of foreign service. Moving on to economists, as you might guess, they're focused on the economy and focus on specifically research and analyzing how the economy can best be developed within these host countries. So there's going to do a little bit of work with private enterprise officers, obviously. They're going to be doing a lot of work with other domains as well to make sure that the projects that we're doing are going to be boosting that economy. So they're going to be looking at economic policy, business, legal, and institutional reform, financial sector reform, all these great things. Economy is not my gig, but I'm glad that there are people out there who are able to do it. And finally, environmental officers are going to be looking at the environment. So sustainability and the effects of climate change is primarily the domain. They might be working on agricultural stuff along with agricultural officers. They might be working on food security along with agricultural officers. But essentially, the environment is their domain, and they're going to be looking at the economic and social development of these countries as it relates to the environment. I went over those 3 backstops pretty quickly, pretty briefly, but I'm sure our 3 panels will be able to cover it in a lot better detail than I would be able to. So on to the different graduate degrees that you might be able to get through the Payne Fellowship to lead to these careers. Starting with engineering, we're looking primarily at engineering or architecture degrees, although there is some wiggle room, right? So you could perhaps be getting an urban development degree or something along those lines. This list is by no means exhaustive, but just a good way for you to get started on thinking about what that might look like. Economists are going to be focused on economics, but it could also be specific realms of economics, like agricultural or resource economics. You could also get in a more general international development, international affairs degree, as long as you have significant coursework in economics. So you could, it has to be at least 1 year of graduate level coursework in economics, specifically macroeconomics or statistics, things like that. So if you want to get an international development degree, you just have to do a little bit more work and plan your coursework to become an economist. And finally, environmental officers, we're looking at graduate degree programs like environmental science, management, law, or policy, looking at sustainable urban development, programs focused on climate change, sustainability. I believe I have one fellow who's focused on a program on clean water and water management, right? So you can be a little bit more technical, but it has to be focused on the environment to become an environmental officer. So hopefully that was at least a very quick run through of the 3 backstops, the 3 E's we have present today. And now we're going to pivot to hearing from Payne alumni and Foreign Service officers directly. Again, I encourage you to write your questions in the chat as they're introducing themselves, and then we'll be able to get to all the questions at the end when we have the Q&A period. So we're going to start with Mariela, if you'd like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, thanks, Christian. Hi, everyone, welcome. My name is Mariela Medina Castellanos. I am a Foreign Service engineer with USAID, and I am based in Ghana. I work in the West Africa Regional Mission that covers 21 West African countries here. I'm a 2016 Payne Fellow, and I went to school for civil engineering at Cal Poly, and then the Fletcher School for international environmental policy. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. Just a brief background on, Christian said to talk about how we came onto the Payne Fellowship and what motivated us. So I'll talk a little bit about that. Like I said, I'm a civil engineer, and I decided to study civil engineering because it's a discipline that touches people's lives every day. Like every day when you wake up and you take a shower, you like drive to work, anything you do, there was civil engineering involved. And that to me was really special. And so in school, I worked with Engineers Without Borders. And then when I graduated, I went to work in consulting, in energy, mostly in the US with some projects in Mexico. But I felt that connection to like people was missing in consulting. I worked for developers, I worked for like big utilities. And so I kind of missed that part of when I worked with Engineers Without Borders and seeing like the work that we do really touch people's lives. And I was looking for another job that will allow me to still use engineering, but more in the international development realm. And I didn't even know what that was, like the concept of international development. I didn't know about USAID. I didn't know about the Foreign Service. So I was looking for a job, and I stumbled upon the Payne Fellowship and USAID. And I saw that you needed to have a master's degree to work there, and that they hire engineers, that they hire all these kinds of technical people. And you know, you move around every few years, and you're working on these like amazing development challenges. And so that to me was like, okay, this is my dream job. Now, what do I have to do to get there? And getting a master's is the first step. And so, like Christian said, I still was, you know, interested in engineering and environment. My background in school was in water resources engineering. So I think that's common of a lot of us engineers at USAID. We have a environmental background. So when applying for the Payne Fellowship, I was also looking at graduate programs. And I'll say now in hindsight that my advice to you in picking a graduate program is to choose something, of course, that's related to what you want to do, but more follow your passion, what you're interested in, because USAID you will learn USAID at USAID. Such a bureaucratic monster. And like the policies and rules, like you're not going to learn in school. So use that time to really pursue something that you're passionate about. And also that's not going to be a financial burden on you. I think Christian mentioned that too. And I think that's key. And I wish someone had told me that when I was picking my graduate program. So I tell you now, I think those two things are keys. Just minimize the financial burden and go after something that you're passionate about, and that you're really going to be interested in learning. I chose international relations program because I felt already I'd been working in engineering. My undergrad was in engineering, and so I kind of wanted to expand that. And it was good. Although now I think maybe I would have gone for something that I was maybe more passionate about. But I enjoyed it, and it was great. I went to the Fletcher School for law and diplomacy, and there's different not technical specialties, but subspecialties within that Masters of Arts, and I pursued international environmental policy. So I was still interested in that, maintaining that environmental side. And then now, so I like I mentioned, I started with USAID in 2018. I worked in Washington, D.C. in the infrastructure and energy office, and I also worked with the water office. And now I'm in a regional mission, which means I cover several different countries. And really, we are like a consulting engineer. So I cover projects from water and sanitation, health. So there's like, if a clinic or hospital is being built, I'm a technical support. So I support those types of projects in Guinea. And then in Ghana and Liberia, I also support education projects, so schools. So you have your hands on everything. And I'll say, I don't know if there's any engineers in the room, but you are really managing infrastructure projects. You're no longer designing, or it's not really going to be heavily technical like in engineering. So it's more of you have a management hat with the context and knowledge of infrastructure, but really is more of a management role. I'll leave it at that, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Great, thank you. And now we have Pratibha to give some background on the journey to becoming an environmental officer.
Yes, so hi everyone, my name is Pratibha Jituru, and yes, as Christian said, I'm a Natural Resources and Environment Officer in USAID's Foreign Service. So I mainly actually come from an engineering background as well, similar to Mariela. So I studied environmental engineering for both my undergrad and my master's as well. And so for undergrad, I graduated from Duke, and I also studied Arabic at the time. And during undergrad, I was very interested in international affairs and got to have a lot of international experience in the Middle East and North Africa region, as well as West Africa. And those experiences kind of solidified my interest in international development. And having spent some time abroad, I was kind of really imagining that I could do this career. I'm also, so I was born in India as well, and I moved to America when I was 2 years old. And so my family's experience coming from poverty in India and coming to the US was also very much colored my experience growing up, and made me want to also give back on in terms of working in something that was related to poverty reduction, as well as environmental, working on environmental issues. And so also after I graduated from Duke, I went to Oman to study Arabic there with the State Department. And then after that, I lived in Jordan for a year, where I had my first NGO gig. So I was working for CARE International's South Syria program. It was specifically a food security and livelihoods program, so very different from engineering. And so having that experience too, I was very much kind of like, I was ready to sign up for something that was going to take me back abroad, and that was going to help me get me into a career where I could really help people and really work on poverty reduction, or working in these types of crises. And so that was around the time when I was looking for a master's program. And my parents were very firm with me that, you know, they're retired now, but at that point they were reaching retirement. They were like, we are not funding any part of your master's program, which was very much understood. And they were also, parents are very scared of debt, like growing up. And so I think they were trying to push me to find funding and find opportunities where I wouldn't have to go into so much debt, because as we all know, master's programs are insanely expensive these days. And so actually, someone at Duke was telling me to look into the Rangel and Pickering fellowships, but I had an engineering degree. And so when I looked on their websites, they said that if you had a STEM background, if you're coming from a STEM background, to look into the Payne Fellowship. And so that's actually what led me into looking into the Payne Fellowship. And I was reading the profiles of other fellows, and I'm pretty sure, Mariela, I saw your profile too. And so I was like very excited and thought that this would be a really good fit for me. And of course, the funding was very generous. And I was like, well, this is going to lead into a career that I am so passionate about and so excited about. And so I immediately applied, and I was lucky enough to be able to get accepted to the program. And so after I left Jordan, I joined a master's program at Johns Hopkins, but I was in the engineering school. So I was in Baltimore. I wasn't in the SciSce program in DC. And the reason why I chose to continue with an engineering degree was because I kind of felt that this was the time to still focus on something more technical. And so because I figured the policy, and as this is exactly what Mariela said, the policy and learning how USAID functions, like you're going to learn that on the job. And so I kind of wanted to stick with something that was more technical. And I was also still very much obsessed with engineering at the time. And so I continued with that coursework. But I pivoted to something a little different. I focused on energy policy and planning modeling. And so, yeah, so, and also I didn't mention before, my undergrad was actually, I focused more on water resources. And so, yeah, a lot of the engineers at USAID come from some kind of water background, it seems. And so the reason why I chose the environment officer backstop was because you get to work on a wide range of global environmental issues that are very complex. So Christian was mentioning before, climate change, also like water resource management, biodiversity conservation. And renewable energy, for example, was something that I got very interested in my master's, and USAID has some very cutting edge work in that sector. And so I was very interested in getting involved in that a bit more. And I got very lucky that I got posted to the Regional Development Mission in Asia, which is based in Thailand. And so I'm actually heading there in literally 3 weeks, which is crazy. And so there I'll be working on, one of the programs I'll be working on is called Asia Edge, which is our energy program there. So one of the big things that we're focused on is helping countries in Southeast Asia introduce more renewable energy projects there, ranging from solar, wind, and also I think we do some gas projects there as well. And so USAID really excites me because we're, especially right now with the energy transition, with the Paris Climate Agreement, the NDCs, the nationally determined contributions from countries. This is a very exciting time to be working on, especially like climate change related issues. And so that is what very much excited me about the environment officer position. And so I kind of hope that in the future, along with energy, I get to work on other types of natural resource management programs and biodiversity conservation programs, and hopefully will get my way back into the Middle East to North Africa region one of these days. So for advice in regards to choosing a master's program, so as I was saying before, I would say try to do something technical, just because it's just something you can add to your toolkit. So when you're in the field, when you're talking to other experts about these very complex environmental programs or environmental issues, you'll have a sense, you'll have some technical knowledge on what they're talking about. But what I did, because my degree was quite technical, and USA definitely does not do technical work like that. We mainly contract that work out. What I did to kind of learn more about the international development field was that I took coursework at SciSce, which is the School of Advanced International Studies. So I went down to DC a few times a week, and I would take a class there. And I took a class in US policymaking in Africa. And then I took another class that was Engineering for Sustainable Development, which we read a lot of the literature and research in the international development field. And so those were ways that kind of helped, I guess, bolster my degree with some of these non-technical courses as well. And some other advice that I would give in regards to choosing a backstop, I would read the job descriptions very carefully. And you'll see that, and Mariella mentioned this too before, is that like we have technical advisory roles as well in these backstops, but a lot of it is managing projects. So you're a bit removed from the field, you're a bit removed from the ground level, what's happening on ground. And so I would be more aware of that. Also with the environment officer position, make sure that you do match your master's program with a degree that's listed in the job description. I know some fellows have had issues with that in the past where it might have not matched directly with what was listed in the job description. So they weren't able to go into the backstop. And also if you're coming from an engineering degree, but you want to go into the environment officer backstop, I would say to be open-minded and flexible with what you may be assigned to, because this is, you're working for the federal government, the needs of the government are, very important, and you are hired to fulfill the needs for the government. And so they may put you, even though you want to go into the environment officer position, they may put you in the engineering position because you have an engineering degree. And I have to say, I see the stuff that Mariella gets to do and some of the other engineering officers get to do, and that's an awesome gig as well. And you can also go into the environment officer position later on in your career. And so there's flexibility there as well. And one last plug for something that a few of the fellows have been working on, or a few of the alums have been working on. We created a coaching handbook, which I believe is now on the website. And so that has a lot of advice and information on how to kind of approach the application and how to approach the interview process, as well as after your interview process and choosing if you do become a finalist. And so I would definitely try to check out that handbook. We basically crowdsourced all this advice and suggestions from all fellows and alums throughout, from multiple cohorts. So I think it's a great resource. But yeah, and please feel free to reach out anytime on LinkedIn or wherever if you want to talk more about the position. Thank you, Christian.
Great, awesome. And now Felicia, to talk about a very different side of international development, the economist role.
Yeah, so hi everyone. My name is Felicia. Born and raised in New York, and I moved down to Washington to study at Howard University for my undergrad, where I majored in economics. And for my grad studies, I decided to go to Johns Hopkins SAIS to also study international economics as well, and mostly on the focus of development economics. So a lot of my approaches to the work that I do at USAID does have an economic lens, and there are opportunities for economists at USAID, giving that technical background as well. So I am a 2017 Payne Fellow. And right after I graduated from grad school in 2019, I joined USAID as an economist. But there are particularly two backstops in which the economist rolls in. There's the economist backstop and the private sector enterprise officer, which both of those two backstops kind of work hand in hand together. But I came in as an economist, but a lot of the work I do also goes into the private sector enterprise officer. So just a little brief background on myself. So I got started in development, how I got interested in development was when I was in college at Howard University. My parents, they're from Haiti, so I'm Haitian American, and there was the huge earthquake that happened in 2010. And I kind of had this really burning desire to kind of go help and do something. So I actually went to Haiti to help on some relief efforts with Howard University, and I did that throughout my time there. And I realized that's when I had this really growing passion to help people in underserved communities, and particularly how can we as the U.S. provide some type of resources or help aid countries that are going through really hard economic struggles and time. So that's how I learned about my passion. And I learned about the Payne Fellowship mainly because I was a student at Howard. As Christian mentioned, Howard managed the Payne Fellowship program. So in 2012, I remember the first launch of the Payne Fellowship. That's how I came across it. And I realized, okay, this is a fellowship that will align me with the career that I want to do, getting into the foreign service, going into development, I planned my way on how I can best prepare myself to be a strong applicant for the Payne Fellowship. So right after I graduated from college, I got a job in Haiti, and I worked in Haiti for a year. And then from there, I came back to DC and I worked for an economic consulting firm and got to travel to other places as well. But what I want to get at is that I particularly picked jobs that I knew would align with what the Payne Fellowship was looking for. So that was mostly international experience. I knew that one of the feedback I received when I was talking to the program manager at the time was, it's good to have more than 6 months international experience. It's looked highly upon. So that's how I decided to look for opportunities overseas. And then also having the opportunity when I came to DC, worked for an economic consulting firm. They are a USAID implementer. So I knew that would also allow me to know the jargons and the lingos and how USAID work, particularly with implementing partners. So I came off, and that's how I decided to kind of structure my way to be a strong applicant. And then by 2017, or 2016 really, is when I applied for the Payne Fellowship. Actually, I applied in 2015 and I did not get the fellowship. So I decided to reapply again the following year, and that's how I got it. So I definitely would encourage those who apply, who don't receive it the first time, to reapply if they can. Because you can definitely, I'm living proof that, the second time is, the third time's a charm, but I'll say the second time is the charm. So yeah, definitely don't get discouraged, just continue and reapply if you can. So now I am in Mozambique, working as an economist in the economic growth office. And I mostly manage economic policies, which basically is that we have an implementing partner, DAI, and their role is to provide research and analyze economic policies within the government, and how to improve on business enabling environments to promote investment, trade, other aspects such as land rights. It could be also related to healthcare systems, agriculture, how to build up industries. So just as my other colleagues were mentioning, I'm not the one that's really technically involved, but I do provide direction on the research. So when our implementing partner comes up with a scope of work, I review the scope of work, and a lot from using the technical skills that I have, help to direct the research into answering particular questions and figuring out how we can use the economic policy to proper implementation, so that the government just doesn't have a sheet of paper that says what they can do, but exactly like a blueprint of how they can go ahead and do it and measure the results. So that's what I do currently right now. I also work with the agricultural team as well. The same exact thing in the economic policy in a lot of developing countries. If it's not related to health, agriculture is really one of the main drivers to growth, but there's also a lack of productivity. So there's opportunities to better those conditions. I also work with the agriculture team on their either researching on past industries that have failed and finding out why did it fail and how USAID or what type of programming USAID can do to enhance or strengthen the industries and promote more investment and trade. So now to go on like how when it comes to picking a graduate school, I decided to go to SAIS mainly because of the field of study. They're strong in economics, particularly international economics. A lot of the graduates go and work at the World Bank or the IMF, and I really wanted to kind of held on to that field of study. So when it comes to finding a graduate school, I would definitely say find something that really aligns with what you want to study and what you want to do. So if it's economics, find, one of the economic schools that will provide you with the real hands-on opportunities, and be really strategic on, finding out if there are accessibilities to professor and also the quality of professors. Are there professors who have done research in your field, you're interested field of studies, and what are their past experience, and really importantly, I would say the access, because depending on the school, it could be hard to find access to professors. So definitely look at that as one aspect to when it comes to searching for or picking a grad school. Also network, not just the network with the professors, but the network of the students. That was also something that was particularly one of my high interests, is making sure that I go to a place that is known to have a huge alumni resources, where alumni are in different organizations, particularly organizations that I'm interested in going in. SAIS definitely has people in which who will work for State Department, for USAID, and even going in more, more to the banks and of that sort. So they provide those opportunities, and definitely having that wide range of networks is definitely important. And also things that I also looked into was financial aid, how generous is the school, or they provide scholarships, do they work with the Payne Fellowships and matching the scholarships as well, to see if that's another area in which that was a main concern for me as well. So financial aid, and then also location, that was also something as well. So that's about it. I'm currently only 4 months in in Mozambique with the USAID mission. This is my first tour. So that's about it. And I'll just leave it on to Christian for the next session.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. So I have a couple questions in mind that I'd like to ask. One of them is more application focused, and the other one is about the lifestyle of Foreign Service Officer. So we're going to go ahead and go with the application one, and then look forward to the future, talking about the Foreign Service Officer life once we get to that. So if you can remember back to your application, what was it like to write your personal statement? What was important for you to get across? Because clearly, all three of you wrote successful personal statements, if not the first time, then the second time. So what was it for you important to get across as part of your story, and why you're interested in the Payne Fellowship?
Who goes first? I don't know. Felicia, would you like to go?
Yeah, sure. I was going to say definitely one of the things that I highlighted more in my second application was painting a better picture of who I am as a person, meaning like where I'm from, my background being Haitian American, and how all of my experiences led me to go and pursue a career in development. So that's one of the things, is focusing on who I am as a person, not just my name is Felicia and I did internship here and worked here, but my name is Felicia and I'm from, Haitian American, and hearing the stories of my parents and family members and seeing the poverty and that helping influence, you know, kind of that sort of kind of building a story.
Yeah, I'll add to Felicia. I think being honest about your story and like being genuine about why, it's exactly what Felicia said, like why she's passionate about pursuing this career is what she was spelling out. So why are you passionate about this career? You're not really focusing on the fellowship. Think about it more like a job application for the USAID Foreign Service. Like, why are you interested in this career? And just be honest and genuine and show yourself and like lay it out. And I think it's a good policy, because, you know, if what's important to you and you're being honest is not really a good fit, then you don't really want to be there. So that's my policy. I don't know if Pratibha has anything to add.
Yeah, so yeah, I guess you guys really said it pretty well. Something that I focused on, because I knew that looking at my resume, it looked like a hodgepodge of random stuff that I had done. But in my head, there was a story, there was a whole narrative. So that's kind of what I tried to explain more, because at that point I had studied Arabic for a pretty long time, and I had studied engineering, which seemed like maybe to the outside very random interests, but at least in my head, it seemed like it was connecting to a career like this. And so I think trying to kind of weave in that story, and like what they're saying, be authentic, be true to who you are, and trying to just, you know, try to show that, I think is really important. And for me, that personally took a lot of time to just reflect. And so I would give yourself that space to kind of just sit with your resume or these random personal statement drafts, and just kind of think more about like who are you and what do you have to contribute to USAID. Yeah.
Great, thank you. It's a question that I get often, so I'm glad you were able to answer it from your own lived experiences. Fast forwarding to you all now being Foreign Service officers, Mariela and Felicia, I'm wondering if you can talk about what has that lifestyle been like now that you have had to go to post and you've had these experiences. And then Pratibha, if after that you can talk about what training and preparing to go to post is like, especially in the COVID world.
I can get it started and then you can chime in, Felicia. So I've been in Ghana for a year and a half now, a little over a year and a half. I arrived March 2020. So I think it's been hectic because of COVID, including the arrival. But I'll say that I feel very lucky that I was in Ghana during the pandemic. And I still got to experience what life is like as a Foreign Service officer abroad. I'm my background, I'm Mexican American, and I found really a strong Latino community in Ghana that I think I only did find through COVID, because, you know, we're always out and about. And so that has been really, really great seeing. One thing that I'll say is like the most special thing to me from a personal side, not necessarily the professional side, is the people that you get to meet where at post, because you already have something in common with them. So it's been really easy to make friends even in the midst of a pandemic. So I can't imagine, like, once things improve even further, that's just going to be even that much better. I'm also married, and so my husband came with me to post, and he's been able to find a job remotely and work, and so balancing family a little bit is a bit of a challenge, and definitely it's something that if you have a partner that you have to think about, and that they have to be fully on board, because it's this lifestyle is as much theirs as it is yours. So I'm happy to talk about that more if anyone has family or partners or are thinking about that. I'm sure Christian can give you my contact info if you have but I'll leave it at that. So I'll let Felicia and Pratibha talk a little bit more.
Yeah, I'll definitely add to that, saying that it's definitely the people who you're with. You get to meet a lot of cool, interesting folks from USAID and state and other diplomats and other missions. And it's interesting. The fact is that we all kind of are here for a purpose, and we're here to make the world a better place. So it's a strong community, and it's definitely something that pushes me forward to continue in the job. So.
And in regards to the training you receive before going out to post, so generally speaking, you will be in DC around a year. That seems to be the average. And so obviously this year we've been here a bit longer because things have been kind of more up in the air, but generally speaking, you'll be in DC for around a year. And so you'll be doing rotations with various offices. And then you'll also complete your language training. So for me, I did my first rotation with Power Africa because of my interest in energy. And then I went to the Asia Bureau, the Middle East Bureau, and now I'm working in DDI, which is one of our bureaus, one of our technical bureaus, and I'm working with the energy division there. And then throughout that whole time as well, I did about 16 weeks of language training to fulfill my tenure requirement in language. And so throughout the process, you're meeting a lot of people, and that'll help you kind of get oriented to USAID. So you get to make a lot of connections in Washington, which is really important because when you're in the mission, you'll be reaching out to your Washington colleagues all the time because they're the ones who provide a lot of the technical knowledge. Thank you, Mariella. Thank you, Mariella. They'll be providing a lot of the technical technical expertise, as well as the thought leadership to the work that you're doing in missions. And so it's been a really good time to just get oriented to USAID and understanding how Washington works.
Great. And now looking at the time, we're just about 5 minutes left. And I want to actually ask you all about what it looked like for you preparing personally for this career. So professionally, we got it covered: graduate school, networking, all these great things. But personally, what did that preparation look like for you, for your family, for your friends, of signing up for an international career?
I could start with that one. So because I'm like very much in the midst of going through the transition right now. And so this is, it's definitely a challenging career. This is not a lot of people will fully understand what you're going through in terms of taking on a career where you're going to move abroad every few years. And so for me, I've really had to develop maintain my relationships in the States a bit differently. And so I know that when I'm abroad, I'll also have to kind of basically maintain these friendships that I've had for so many years a bit differently. But that's what I kind of spent this time in DC doing. Once it was safe enough to travel and see people, I started seeing my friends and started seeing a lot more of my family and kind of helping them understand like what my future is going to look like, but how I am very much wanting them in my life. And so it's that's something that I've kind of had to I've just had a lot of discussions with my friends and family about as well. And then personally, I've been trying to, I think COVID really kind of forced me into this more so, but just being a lot more mindful about my life, learning how to take on uncertainty and challenges, I think is a really important skill to learn as a foreign service officer. And so kind of preparing myself for what the future is going to hold is something that I've also been trying to do personally to prepare for my career.
And I'll say, like I said, I'm from Mexico, so I actually grew up in Mexico, and my entire family is still there. And I'm the only person in my family and group of friends that's ever left like the city that I'm from. So I think everybody and I've been doing this for a long time. So I think they're just like resigned, like she's crazy, she's gonna do what she's gonna do, but they love me and accept it. So with that transition, it wasn't too difficult, but I'll say if you are in a relationship or have a partner or live with someone, that's when it starts to get complicated, because you're building a life together, and you want to make sure that the other person's priorities are like equally balanced as you go through your career that is going to take you to a different country every couple of years. And so I was lucky that I was with my partner when I got the fellowship, and we got married right before I started with USAID. So I think he understood, or he signed up. It was his choice too. But again, it's just something that you always have to have family be a priority, to make sure that they're happy, because if they're not happy, you're not going to be happy. So it's like a lifelong thing to navigate. Yeah, and I'll pass it over to Felicia.
Yeah, I definitely would say that. I came in, joined the Foreign Service single, and I'm overseas single. And that also aspect definitely impacts, or I know it's a lot of question a lot of people ask, like, oh, now how are you gonna, what's next? So, I mean, I just take it day by day. I don't stress it. I mean, I think it's just leaving it to faith and seeing how things will work out in that sense as well. And in terms of finding, like when it comes from friends back home, Instagram and FaceTime, WhatsApp always works. So even though I'm so far away, I do still feel connected to my friends just through the social media apps and FaceTime and other sorts. So it's not too bad. So currently right now, but I've only been here for 4 months. So ask me in a year.
Well, great. Thank you all for giving such great advice, such great perspective on your own personal careers, your journeys, but also what it's like to now live in that lifestyle and get used to it. I'm looking forward to hearing more about it later on and just how you all progress in your careers. But with that, we're going to go ahead and close out this session and this event, day 3 for Backstop Week. If you're interested in hearing about other backstops, tomorrow we'll be talking about program officer, education officers, and contracting officers. So you're welcome to join us tomorrow again at noon Eastern Standard Time. And again, this will be recorded and available at a later time. But thank you, Mariela, Pratibha, Felicia, for joining me, for sharing your experiences and your expertise. Super great time for all of us.
Thanks
Thank you for
everyone for
setting this up.
joining. Yeah.